The blinding Arizona sun beat down mercilessly as Abigail Marshall stumbled through the dusty streets of Old Tucson, her 3-year-old son Samuel limp in her arms. 6 days without a proper meal had taken its toll on both of them, and the boy, once full of energy and laughter, now barely stirred as she carried him through town. She had sold everything: her wedding ring, her mother's locket, even the sturdy boots off her own feet, just to keep them fed after her husband's death 3 months prior. Now, with nothing left but the clothes on their backs and a small burlap sack stuffed with straw for Samuel to sleep on, Abigail faced the cruel reality that she might lose her child too. It was 1878, and Old Tucson was booming with silver prospectors, cowboys, and those looking to stake their claim in the unforgiving desert frontier. The town had swelled to twice its size in just 2 years, leaving little opportunity for a widow with a young child. Abigail had been turned away from every establishment in town, too inexperienced for the saloons, too female for the mines, and too proud for the brothels. As the midday heat intensified, Abigail ducked into the narrow alley beside the general store, lowering her exhausted body to the ground. She arranged the empty sack beneath Samuel's head, providing what little comfort she could in their desperate circumstances. His small face was flushed with fever, his lips cracked and dry. "Just rest, my sweet boy," she whispered, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. "Mama will figure something out." The words felt hollow even as she spoke them. "Madam, you all right down there?" A deep voice startled her, and Abigail looked up to see a tall figure blocking the sunlight at the end of the alley. He approached slowly, and as he drew closer, she could make out his features: a weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat, kind eyes, and a concerned expression that seemed genuine. "We're fine," Abigail said reflexively, pulling Samuel closer to her chest. "Just resting a moment." The man crouched down, keeping a respectful distance. "No offense, madam, but you don't look fine, and neither does your boy." His voice was gentle, with a slight drawl that marked him as being from somewhere east of the Mississippi. "Name's Noah Irving. I run the livery stable down the road." Abigail hesitated, pride battling with desperation. "Abigail Marshall," she finally replied, "and this is Samuel." Noah's gaze moved to the child, and something in his expression shifted. "He's burning up," he observed, reaching out a hand but stopping short of touching the boy. "How long has he been sick?" 2 days, Abigail admitted. "I've been giving him water, but he's so weak." Noah stood, his decision apparently made. "Madam, I don't mean to overstep, but that child needs help. I've got a room above the stable. It ain't much, but it's clean, and there's a proper bed. He can't be sleeping on an empty sack in this heat." Abigail stiffened. "I don't accept charity, Mr. Irving." "It's not charity," he countered. "I could use help around the stable. Feeding the horses, keeping the books. Been looking for someone with a good head for numbers." Abigail searched his face for any sign of deception, any hint of the predatory looks she'd grown accustomed to from men since losing Daniel. She found none. "He'll sleep on my bed tonight," Noah continued, "and we'll get some food and medicine in him. You can take the chair or the floor, whatever makes you comfortable, but that boy needs help now." Tears welled in Abigail's eyes. 6 days of rejection and closed doors, and now this stranger was offering them shelter with no apparent ulterior motive. "Why would you help us?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Noah's expression softened. "Because somebody once did the same for me, madam. And that boy deserves better than an alley floor." After a moment of hesitation, Abigail nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, attempting to rise with Samuel in her arms, but her weakened legs betrayed her. "May I?" Noah asked, extending his arms toward Samuel. Reluctantly, Abigail allowed him to lift her son, watching as he cradled the small body with surprising tenderness for such large hands. "Follow me," he said, already walking toward the street. "It's not far." With no other options and her son's life hanging in the balance, Abigail picked up the empty sack, the last remnant of their former life, and followed the cowboy into the blinding Arizona sun. The livery stable was a large wooden structure at the edge of town, the scent of hay and horses strong in the afternoon heat. Noah led her through the main area where several horses stood in their stalls, past a small office, and up a narrow staircase at the back. The room above was simple but clean, just as he'd promised. A single bed stood against one wall, a small table and two chairs near the only window, and a cast iron stove in the corner. It wasn't much, but to Abigail it looked like paradise. Noah gently laid Samuel on the bed. "I'll fetch the doctor," he said, moving toward the door. "There's water in that pitcher and some jerky in the tin on the table. Please help yourself." "I can't pay the doctor," Abigail said, the reality of their situation crashing back over her. "Doc Wilson owes me a favor," Noah replied. "Don't you worry about that now." After he left, Abigail dampened a cloth and placed it on Samuel's forehead, then forced herself to eat a small piece of jerky and drink some water. The simple act of sitting on a chair rather than the hard ground was enough to make her eyes well with tears again. True to his word, Noah returned with a gruff older man carrying a leather medical bag. Dr. Wilson examined Samuel thoroughly, his expression grave. "Fever and dehydration," he pronounced. "Not uncommon in this heat, especially for little ones." He mixed some powders with water and helped Abigail administer the medicine to Samuel. "Keep him cool, get as much water into him as you can and some broth if he'll take it. I'll come back tomorrow." As the doctor packed his bag, Abigail heard him murmur to Noah, "You're a good man, Irving." This little family needed an angel. After the doctor left, Noah cleared his throat awkwardly. "I need to tend to the horses, but I'll bring up some supper later. There's a wash basin behind that screen if you'd like to freshen up." "Thank you," Abigail said, the words wholly inadequate for what this man had done. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Noah shook his head. "No need, Mrs. Marshall, just get your boy well." He hesitated at the door. "And I meant what I said about work. I really could use the help." After he left, Abigail allowed herself the luxury of washing her face and arms with the cool water in the basin. She changed Samuel into a clean shirt she found folded on a shelf much too large for him, but cleaner than his sweat-soaked clothes. As the afternoon wore on, Samuel's fever seemed to break slightly. His eyes fluttered open and he managed to take a few sips of water. "Mama," he croaked, his voice weak. "I'm here, love," she soothed, stroking his hair. "We're safe now. A kind man is helping us." Samuel's eyes drifted closed again, but his breathing seemed easier, less labored. Abigail sat beside him, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest, afraid to hope but unable to stop herself. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the single window, she heard Noah's heavy tread on the stairs. He knocked softly before entering, carrying a tray with 2 bowls of stew and a small loaf of bread. "How is he?" Noah asked, setting the tray on the table. "Better, I think," Abigail replied. "His fever's down a little and he woke briefly." Noah's shoulders visibly relaxed. "That's good news." He gestured to the food. "It's nothing fancy, but it's hot." Abigail moved to the table, suddenly ravenous at the smell of the rich stew. "You cook as well as run a stable." A small smile appeared beneath Noah's mustache. "Mrs. Chen from the cafe takes pity on me, says a man can't live on jerky alone." As they ate in comfortable silence, Abigail studied her benefactor. Noah Irving was perhaps in his early 30s, with sun-browned skin and eyes the color of strong coffee. His hands were calloused from work, and there was a faded scar that ran along his left forearm. Despite his imposing height, there was something gentle about him, a carefulness in how he moved and spoke. "How long have you been in Old Tucson?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Going on 5 years now," he replied. "Came west after the war like a lot of men. Worked cattle drives for a while, then saved enough to buy the stable when old Jenkins decided to head back east." Abigail nodded. "My husband and I came 2 years ago. Daniel had dreams of striking silver." Her voice faltered. "He died in a mine collapse 3 months ago." Noah's expression softened with understanding. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Marshall. Please call me Abigail," she said quietly. "Abigail," he repeated, as if testing the name. "What did you do before you were on your own?" She stared into her nearly empty bowl. "We had a small house on the edge of town. I took in laundry, did some mending. After Daniel died, I couldn't keep up with the rent. We've been moving from place to place, staying where we could." Her voice broke. "Today was the first time I had nowhere to go." Noah was silent for a long moment. "Well, you have somewhere now," he finally said. Stay as long as you need to get back on your feet. That night, true to his word, Samuel slept on Noah's bed, his small body finally relaxed in proper sleep. Abigail insisted on taking the floor, making a pallet from the spare blankets Noah provided. As she lay in the darkness, listening to her son's steady breathing, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt since Daniel's death: hope. Morning came with the sounds of the stable below horses nickering, the scrape of a shovel against the packed earth floor, men's voices calling greetings. Abigail woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was until her eyes fell on Samuel, still sleeping peacefully in the bed. She rose quietly and washed at the basin, using a small comb she found to tidy her long brown hair. Her dress was wrinkled and travel-stained, but there was little she could do about that now. Noah had left fresh water and some biscuits on the table, along with a note written in surprisingly neat script. "Gone to fetch supplies. Back by noon. Make yourself at home." N.I. Samuel woke shortly after, his eyes clearer than they had been in days. "Hungry mama," he said, and Abigail nearly wept with relief at the familiar demand. "We have biscuits, sweetheart," she said, helping him sit up. "And look at this nice bed you're in. Isn't it better than our sack?" Samuel looked around curiously. "Where are we?" "A kind man named Mr. Irving is letting us stay in his room," she explained, breaking a biscuit into small pieces for him. "He has horses downstairs." Samuel's eyes widened. "Can I see the horses?" Abigail laughed, the sound surprising her after so long. "When you're stronger, yes." By the time Noah returned, Abigail had tidied the room and helped Samuel drink more water. He seemed remarkably improved, though still weak. "Well, look who's awake," Noah said, smiling at Samuel. "Feeling better, young man?" Samuel regarded him solemnly from the bed. "Do you really have horses?" Noah chuckled. "I do indeed, 7 of them plus whatever travelers board with us." He set down the packages he was carrying. "And I brought something for you." From one of the bundles, he produced a small wooden horse, simply carved but with careful attention to detail. Samuel's face lit up as Noah placed it in his small hands. "Thank you," he whispered, immediately beginning to make the horse gallop across the blanket. "It's nothing fancy," Noah said, almost apologetically. "I whittle some when business is slow." "It's perfect," Abigail said softly. "You're too kind." Noah looked embarrassed by the praise. "I also brought some clothes that might fit the boy. Old Mrs. Winters down at the mercantile had some things her grandsons outgrew." He handed Abigail another package. "And there's a dress in there that she thought might suit you." Abigail opened the bundle to find a serviceable blue calico dress and some small shirts and trousers that would indeed fit Samuel. "I can't accept, consider it an advance on your wages," Noah interrupted. "If you still want the job, that is." Abigail met his gaze. "I do, thank you." Over the next week, as Samuel regained his strength, Abigail began working in the stable. Noah showed her how to keep the books, how to measure feed, and which horses needed special handling. She proved a quick study, and Noah seemed pleased with her work. "You've got a good head for numbers," he commented one afternoon as she balanced the monthly accounts. "Better than mine, that's for sure." Abigail smiled. "I used to help my father with his store back in Missouri before I married." Each night, Noah insisted that Samuel keep the bed while he made do with a bedroll in the tack room downstairs. Despite Abigail's protests, he refused to hear of any other arrangement. "The boy needs proper rest to get his strength back," he maintained. "And I've slept in worse places, believe me." Dr. Wilson visited twice more, pronouncing Samuel well on the road to recovery by his last visit. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up," he told Abigail. "He's a resilient little fellow." As Samuel improved, his natural curiosity returned. He followed Noah around the stable, asking endless questions about the horses and the tools and everything in between. Noah answered each one with patient good humor. "Mama, Mr. Noah says I can ride on Daisy when I'm bigger," Samuel announced excitedly one evening. "Does he now?" Abigail raised an eyebrow at Noah, who was washing up after a long day. "Daisy's gentle as a lamb," Noah assured her. "Wouldn't let him near any other horse, but she's perfect for beginners." Abigail watched the interaction between her son and this man who had so unexpectedly become their protector. Noah was never anything but kind and respectful, never presuming or overstepping, Yet there was a growing easiness between them that she found both comforting and unsettling. As the second week of their stay began, Abigail approached Noah while they were working together in the stable office. "We should discuss a more permanent arrangement," she said carefully. "Samuel and I can't keep imposing on your generosity." Noah looked up from the ledger he was reviewing. "You're not imposing. You work hard, and having you here has been good." "Even so," Abigail persisted, "you need your room back. Perhaps we could find lodgings nearby, something I could afford on the wages you're paying me." Noah was quiet for a moment, considering. "There's a small room at the back of the stable," he finally said. "It was meant to be a tack room, but I never use it. It would need some fixing up, but it could make a proper living space for you and Samuel." "You'd be our landlord as well as our employer?" Abigail asked, uncertain. "I'd be a neighbor," Noah corrected gently. "And you'd have your privacy. The room has its own entrance from the back alley." Abigail thought of the alternatives: the cramped, expensive rooms in town, most in buildings that also housed saloons or gaming halls. Not the environment she wanted for her son. "Thank you," she said finally. "That would be perfect." Over the next few days, Noah set about converting the unused room. He installed a small stove, built a partition to create a sleeping area, and even fashioned a small bed for Samuel. Abigail contributed what she could, sewing curtains from fabric Noah purchased and arranging their meager possessions to make the space homey. By the end of the week, the room was transformed into a snug living space. It was small but clean and private, with a door that locked from the inside, a detail that Noah seemed particularly concerned about. "A woman and child on their own should have security," he explained when Abigail commented on the sturdy lock he'd installed. The day they moved into their new quarters, nearly 3 weeks after Noah had found them in the alley, Samuel was fully recovered. He bounced excitedly around the small room, claiming the little bed Noah had built as his own. "Look, Mama, I have my own bed, just like a big boy," he exclaimed. "Yes, you do," Abigail agreed, catching Noah's eye over her son's head. "And we have Mr. Irving to thank for that." Noah shifted uncomfortably under her grateful gaze. "It's nothing fancy," he said, echoing his words from that first day. That evening, after Samuel was asleep, Abigail found Noah sitting on a bench outside the stable, smoking a cigarette and gazing at the stars. She hesitated, then sat beside him, maintaining a respectable distance. "I've never properly thanked you," she said quietly. "What you've done for us." "I don't have the words." Noah tapped ash from his cigarette. "Anyone would have done the same." Abigail shook her head. "No, they wouldn't, and we both know it." She paused, gathering her courage. "May I ask why? The truth, not just that someone once helped you." Noah was silent for so long that Abigail thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "I had a wife and son once," he said, his eyes still on the stars. "Back in Tennessee before the war, Sarah and little James." He took a deep breath. "There was an outbreak of fever while I was away fighting. By the time I got the letter and made it home, they were both gone." Abigail's heart constricted. "Oh, Noah, I'm so sorry." "When I saw you and your boy in that alley," he continued, "he looked so much like James. Same dark hair, same little face. And you had that same desperate look Sarah had in the last letter she wrote me, begging me to come home because she couldn't manage alone anymore." His voice broke slightly. "I couldn't save them, but maybe I could help you." Impulsively, Abigail reached out and took his hand. "You did more than help. You saved us." Noah looked down at their joined hands, then gently squeezed hers before releasing it. "It's getting late," he said, standing. "You should get some rest." Abigail nodded and rose as well. "Good night, Noah." As she walked back to her new room, she felt a confusing mixture of emotions. Gratitude, certainly, but something else too, a warmth and connection she hadn't expected to feel again after losing Daniel. Summer turned to fall, and life settled into a comfortable routine. Abigail managed the books and helped with the lighter stable work, while also taking in mending from townspeople to supplement her income. Samuel grew stronger daily, becoming a familiar sight around the stable, his wooden horse never far from his small hands. Noah proved to be a patient teacher, showing Samuel how to brush the gentler horses and explaining the workings of the stable in terms the child could understand. Abigail often found herself watching them together, struck by how natural they seemed with each other. One crisp October afternoon, Abigail was returning from delivering some mended shirts to the mercantile when she heard Samuel's delighted laughter from the stable yard. Rounding the corner, she stopped short at the sight before her. Noah sat astride Daisy, the placid mare he'd promised Samuel he could eventually ride, and seated in front of him, securely held in his strong arms, was her son. They were moving at the slowest possible walk around the yard, but from Samuel's expression, they might as well have been galloping across the open desert. "Mama, look," Samuel called when he spotted her. "I'm riding like a real cowboy." Noah immediately reined Daisy to a halt. "We were just having a little lesson," he explained, looking slightly guilty. "I wouldn't let him fall, I promise." Instead of the fear or anger Noah clearly expected, Abigail found herself smiling. "He looks perfectly safe to me," she said, "and happier than I've seen him in a long time." Relief washed over Noah's face. "We'll just finish this circle then." "Right, partner," Samuel nodded enthusiastically, and Noah clicked to Daisy, resuming their slow circuit of the yard. That evening, after Samuel was tucked in bed with his wooden horse standing guard on the small table beside him, Abigail sat at their little table, mending a tear in one of Noah's shirts. There was a soft knock at the door, and she opened it to find Noah standing there, hat in hand. "I wanted to apologize again about the riding," he said. "I should have asked your permission first." Abigail shook her head. "There's no need to apologize. You're wonderful with him." Noah glanced past her to where Samuel slept. "He's a good boy, smart too." "He adores you," Abigail said softly. Noah's eyes returned to hers, an unreadable expression on his face. "Abigail, He began, then stopped. "There's a social at the church on Saturday. Music, dancing, food. I thought maybe you and Samuel might like to go. As my guests," he added hastily. Abigail felt a flutter in her chest that she hadn't experienced in a very long time. "I'd like that," she said. "We both would." Noah's face broke into a smile that transformed his usually serious features. "Good, that's good." He put his hat back on. "Well, good night then." "Good night, Noah." After he left, Abigail leaned against the closed door, her heart beating a little faster than normal. She was a widow with a young son, still grieving her husband in many ways. And yet, there was no denying the warmth that spread through her whenever Noah was near. Saturday arrived clear and cool, perfect weather for the church social. Abigail dressed Samuel in his best clothes, now supplemented by a few new items she had been able to purchase with her wages. For herself, she wore the blue calico dress Noah had given her that first day, now altered to fit her properly. Noah knocked on their door precisely at noon, dressed in a clean shirt with his hair still damp from washing. He held out his hand to Samuel. "Ready for an adventure, partner?" he asked, and Samuel eagerly took his hand. The church social was held in the community hall adjacent to the small white church at the center of town. Long tables were laden with food brought by the townspeople, and a small band played lively tunes in the corner. Children ran about playing games while adults visited and danced. As they entered, Abigail felt a momentary flash of anxiety. This would be her first social outing since Daniel's death, and she wasn't sure how she would be received. But to her surprise, several women approached immediately, welcoming her warmly. "You must be Mrs. Marshall," said a plump, friendly woman with silver-streaked hair. "I'm Martha Wilson, the doctor's wife. We've heard so much about you from Noah." "All good things, I hope," Abigail replied, casting a glance at Noah, who looked slightly embarrassed. "Nothing but praise," Martha assured her, "and this must be the young man who's made such a remarkable recovery." She bent down to Samuel's level. "There are some children playing games in the churchyard, if you'd like to join them." Samuel looked up at Abigail questioningly. "May I, Mama?" Abigail hesitated. Samuel hadn't played with other children since they'd lost their home. "I'll keep an eye on him," Noah promised, understanding her concern. "All right then," Abigail agreed, "but stay where Mr. Irving can see you." As Samuel ran off to join the other children, Martha linked her arm through Abigail's. "Come meet everyone properly," she said, leading her toward a group of women near the refreshment table. The afternoon passed pleasantly. Abigail found the townspeople far more welcoming than she had expected, particularly once they understood she was working for Noah rather than accepting charity. The women especially seemed relieved to see Noah with company. "That man has been alone too long," confided Mrs. Chen from the cafe as they watched Noah playing a horseshoe game with Samuel and some of the other children. "It's good to see him smile again." As the afternoon wore on, the band began playing a waltz. Couples moved to the center of the hall, forming a circle for dancing. Noah approached Abigail, who was watching from the sidelines. "Would you care to dance?" he asked, his expression both hopeful and uncertain. "What about Samuel?" Abigail asked, looking for her son in the crowd. "He's with Doc Wilson," Noah replied, nodding toward where the doctor was showing Samuel and another boy how to play checkers. "He'll be fine for one dance." Abigail hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in Noah's. "I'd love to." Noah led her to the dance floor, placing one hand respectfully at her waist, the other holding hers. As they began to move with the music, Abigail was aware of curious glances from the townspeople, but found she didn't mind. "Everyone is staring," she murmured to Noah. "That's because you're the prettiest woman here," he replied, then immediately looked as though he regretted the words. Abigail felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you," she said softly. They danced in silence for a moment, the music swelling around them. Being in Noah's arms felt both strange and right, a contradiction that left Abigail feeling slightly breathless. "I haven't danced since before Samuel was born," she admitted. Daniel wasn't one for social gatherings. Noah's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Well, you haven't forgotten how." As the dance ended, Abigail reluctantly stepped away from Noah's embrace. "I should check on Samuel," she said. Noah nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "I'll come with you." They found Samuel still engrossed in his checkers game, clearly enjoying himself. "Mama, doctor." "Wilson says I'm a natural at this game," he exclaimed when he spotted her. "He has a good mind for strategy," the doctor agreed, smiling. "Reminds me of my own boys at that age." The rest of the afternoon passed in a pleasant blur of conversation, music, and food. Samuel made friends with several of the local children, including the doctor's grandson, while Abigail found herself welcomed into the circle of town women who ran the church activities. As the sun began to set, families started gathering their children and heading home. Samuel was clearly tired but happy, his eyes bright with excitement from the day's activities. "I think it's time we headed back," Abigail said, noticing her son's drooping eyelids. Noah nodded, helping Samuel into his jacket. "Did you have a good time, partner?" Samuel nodded enthusiastically. "The best. Can we come again next time, if your mother agrees?" Noah replied, glancing at Abigail. "We'll see," she said, but her smile gave away her answer. The walk back to the stable was quiet, Samuel too tired to maintain his usual stream of questions. Halfway there, he stumbled with fatigue, and without hesitation, Noah swung him up onto his shoulders. "Hold on tight," he instructed, and Samuel giggled with delight at his new vantage point. Watching them, Abigail felt a pang of both happiness and guilt. Samuel needed a father figure, and Noah had naturally stepped into that role. But was it fair to either of them to allow this attachment to grow if it couldn't lead anywhere? And what of her own growing feelings for Noah? By the time they reached their little room behind the stable, Samuel was nearly asleep on Noah's shoulders. Noah gently lowered him down, and Abigail took her son's hand. "Say good night to Mr. Irving," she prompted. "G-night, Mr. Noah," Samuel mumbled sleepily. "Thank you for the best day." "You're welcome, partner," Noah replied, ruffling the boy's hair. "Sleep well." As Samuel stumbled inside, Abigail lingered in the doorway. "Thank you for today," she said. "We both needed that more than I realized." Noah stood with his hat in his hands, turning it slowly as if gathering his thoughts. "Abigail," he began, then hesitated. "I know it hasn't been long since you lost your husband, and I don't want to presume anything or rush you, but I want you to know that I care for you and Samuel." "Very much." Abigail's heart quickened. "Noah, you don't have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I just wanted you to know." "Good night, Abigail." Before she could respond, he had turned and was walking toward the main stable building, his shoulders straight and his step purposeful. Abigail closed the door and leaned against it, her mind whirling with confused emotions. Daniel had been gone only 7 months. Was it disloyal to feel this way about another man so soon? And yet, Noah was nothing like Daniel, quiet where Daniel had been boisterous, steady where Daniel had been impulsive, gentle where Daniel had often been harsh. Samuel was already half asleep in his little bed when Abigail came to tuck him in. "Mama," he murmured as she pulled the blanket up to his chin. "I like Mr. Noah." "I know you do, sweetheart," she replied, kissing his forehead. "He likes us too," Samuel added, his eyes drifting closed. "He told me so." Abigail sat beside her sleeping son for a long while, thinking about the man who had saved them from the streets and given them not just shelter, but a home and a future. Noah Irving, with his quiet strength and kind heart, had become essential to their lives in ways she hadn't anticipated. November brought cooler temperatures and preparations for the coming winter. Business at the stable slowed somewhat as fewer travelers passed through town, giving Noah more time to work on improvements to both the stable and Abigail and Samuel's living quarters. He added shelves and a small wardrobe to their room, and even installed a window that looked out onto a small garden area behind the stable. "So you can have some sunlight," he explained as he set the glass panes in place. Abigail found her feelings for Noah growing stronger with each passing day. She looked forward to their morning conversations over coffee, to the way he always made time to answer Samuel's endless questions, to the quiet evenings when they would sometimes sit together outside, watching the stars after Samuel was asleep. Yet she hesitated to acknowledge these feelings openly. The memory of Daniel was still fresh, and the thought of opening her heart again was frightening. What if she lost Noah too? What would become of Samuel, who had already grown so attached? One crisp morning in late November, Abigail was working in the stable office when Mrs. Wilson stopped by, ostensibly to leave a jar of preserves for Noah, who had helped repair her roof the previous week. "How are you settling in, my dear?" The doctor's wife asked, taking a seat across from Abigail's desk. "Very well, thank you," Abigail replied. "Everyone has been so kind," Mrs. Wilson nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "Especially Noah, I imagine." Abigail felt her cheeks warm. "He's been a good friend to both Samuel and me." "Just a friend?" Mrs. Wilson asked gently. Abigail looked down at her hands. "I'm not sure what else we could be. It's been less than a year since my husband died." Mrs. Wilson reached across the desk to pat Abigail's hand. "My dear, grief doesn't follow a timetable. And finding love again doesn't diminish what you had before." "Love," Abigail echoed, startled by the word. The older woman smiled. "I've seen how you look at each other, and how good he is with your boy." She rose to leave. "Just remember, life is short, especially out here. Don't waste time on what others might think when your heart knows what it wants." After Mrs. Wilson left, Abigail sat lost in thought, her ledger work forgotten. Was it possible to love two men in one lifetime? And if she did love Noah, was she brave enough to risk her heart again? That evening, after Samuel was asleep, Abigail found Noah in the stable, checking on a mare that was due to foal soon. She watched him from the doorway, noting the gentle way he spoke to the animal, the careful movements of his strong hands as he examined her. "How is she?" Abigail asked softly, stepping into the stall. Noah looked up, a smile spreading across his face at the sight of her. "Restless, it won't be long now." He patted the mare's neck. "A day or two at most." Abigail moved closer, standing beside him to stroke the horse's velvety nose. "Samuel will be excited. He's never seen a foal being born." "It's something to see, all right," Noah agreed, "though it usually happens in the middle of the night." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sounds the soft nickering of the horses and the rustle of hay beneath their feet. Abigail was acutely aware of Noah's presence beside her, of the warmth emanating from his body in the cool evening air. "Noah," she began, gathering her courage, "I've been thinking about what you said after the church social." Noah turned to face her fully, his expression carefully neutral. "You don't have to say anything, Abigail. I meant what I said about not rushing you. I know." She took a deep breath. "But I think I might be ready, not for everything, not yet, but for a start." Noah's eyes softened and he reached out slowly to touch her cheek. "A start is all I'm asking for," he said quietly. "The rest can come in its own time." Abigail leaned slightly into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. Samuel adores you, she whispered. And I adore him, Noah replied. Almost as much as I adore his mother. Before Abigail could respond, the mare beside them shifted restlessly, breaking the moment. Noah turned his attention back to the animal, checking her condition again. I think we'd better keep an eye on her tonight, he said. She's progressing faster than I expected. Abigail nodded, understanding the practical necessity but reluctant to let the moment between them end. I'll check on Samuel and bring some coffee, she offered. The birth of the foal became an unexpected milestone in their relationship. Noah stayed up all night with the mare, and Abigail joined him for much of it, bringing coffee and food and helping where she could. In the early hours of the morning, just before dawn, the foal was born a spindly-legged filly with a white star on her forehead. She's beautiful, Abigail breathed, watching as the newborn struggled to stand for the first time. Noah's face was alight with the wonder of new life. Yes, she is, he agreed, though his eyes were on Abigail rather than the foal. When Samuel woke and came to the stable for his morning visit, his eyes grew round with amazement at the sight of the wobbly-legged filly nursing from her mother. She was just born, he asked in awe. This morning. Just a few hours ago, Noah confirmed, lifting Samuel up for a better view. What do you think we should name her? Samuel considered this seriously. Star, he decided, pointing to the white mark on the filly's forehead, because she has a star and because she was born under the stars. Noah glanced at Abigail, a question in his eyes. She nodded, understanding his unspoken thought. Star it is, Noah agreed. And you know what, partner, when she's old enough to train, she'll be yours to ride. Samuel's mouth fell open. Mine, really? Noah nodded solemnly. Really. But that means you'll have to learn how to take care of her properly. It's a big responsibility. I can do it, Samuel assured him earnestly. I'll be the best horse owner ever, you'll see. Over the following weeks, Noah began teaching Samuel the basics of horse care, always under Abigail's watchful eye. The boy took to his new responsibilities with a seriousness that made both adults smile, diligently checking on Star each morning and evening, helping to keep her stall clean, and learning how to mix her mother's feed. As Christmas approached, a festive spirit took hold of the town. The mercantile displayed holiday goods, the church planned special services, and homes were decorated with whatever people could manage in the frontier town. One evening in mid-December, Noah appeared at Abigail's door with a small pine tree and a box of simple ornaments. I thought Samuel might like to decorate for Christmas, he explained. It's not much, but it's perfect, Abigail interrupted, ushering him in. Samuel will be thrilled. Indeed, her son's face lit up at the sight of the little tree, a Christmas tree just like we used to have. Together, the three of them set up the tree in the corner of the small room and hung the ornaments, wooden stars painted gold, small fabric angels, and strings of dried berries. Noah had even found a small star for the top, which he lifted Samuel up to place. As they stood back to admire their work, Samuel between them holding both their hands, Abigail was struck by how much like a family they had become. She glanced at Noah and found him watching her, a tender expression on his face that made her heart swell. Thank you, she mouthed silently over Samuel's head. Noah smiled, and in that moment, Abigail knew with certainty that what she felt for him was love. Christmas Day dawned clear and cold. Samuel woke early, excited to find a small stocking hanging from one of the shelves Noah had built, filled with an orange, some hard candies, and a new set of carved wooden animals to join his beloved horse. Look, Mama, Father Christmas found us, he exclaimed. Abigail, who had carefully saved a portion of her wages for weeks to afford these small treats, smiled at her son's joy. He certainly did. There was a knock at the door, and Noah entered bearing gifts wrapped in brown paper and string a new book of adventure stories for Samuel and a beautiful woolen shawl for Abigail. Merry Christmas, he said, somewhat shyly. We have something for you too, Abigail replied, handing him a package that contained a new leather belt she had made from scraps purchased at the mercantile. And I made you this, Samuel added proudly, presenting Noah with a drawing of the three of them standing beside Star's stall. Noah accepted both gifts with genuine pleasure. These are perfect, he said, his voice slightly husky with emotion. Thank you both. They spent the morning together, then joined other townspeople for the Christmas service at the church, followed by a community dinner in the meeting hall. Abigail noticed that they were now treated as a unit by most of the town: Noah, Abigail, and Samuel, a family in all but name. That evening, after Samuel had fallen asleep, exhausted from the excitement of the day, Abigail and Noah sat outside on the bench near the stable door. Despite the cold, the sky was clear and filled with stars. "Did you have a good Christmas?" Noah asked, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "The best in a very long time," Abigail replied honestly. "Samuel, too, you've made it special for both of us." Noah reached for her hand, entwining his fingers with hers. "Abigail," he began, his voice serious, "I need to ask you something." Abigail's heart quickened. "Yes, I love you," he said simply. "You and Samuel both. I know it hasn't been that long since we met, and even less time since things changed between us, but I know what I feel." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I'd like to court you properly with the intention of marriage, if you'll have me." Abigail felt tears spring to her eyes. "Oh, Noah." His face fell slightly at her hesitation. "If it's too soon, I understand. We can wait." "No," she said quickly, squeezing his hand. "It's not that, it's just—" She took a deep breath. "I love you too, but I'm afraid." "Of what?" he asked gently. "Of losing you like I lost Daniel," she admitted. "Of Samuel losing another father. Of having my heart broken again." Noah turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I can't promise nothing will ever happen to me," he said solemnly. "No one can promise that, but I can promise to love you and Samuel with everything I have for as long as I have." "Isn't that worth the risk?" Abigail looked into his eyes, seeing the depth of feeling there, the sincerity of his words. Slowly, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, it is." Noah's face broke into a smile that transformed his features. Gently, he leaned forward and kissed her, a tender, questioning kiss that asked as much as it gave. Abigail responded, her heart racing as she allowed herself to fully acknowledge her feelings for this man who had saved them in more ways than one. When they finally parted, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes then?" he asked, a hint of laughter in his voice. "Yes," Abigail confirmed, smiling through her tears. "That's definitely a yes." The new year brought changes both expected and surprising. Noah began courting Abigail officially, taking her to dinner at the hotel restaurant, escorting her and Samuel to church each Sunday, and spending most evenings with them in their small quarters. The town observed this development with approval. Noah Irving had been respected but somewhat isolated in the community, and seeing him happy with Abigail and Samuel brought a collective sense of satisfaction. In late January, Noah approached Abigail with a proposition. "I've been thinking," he began as they sat together after dinner, Samuel playing with his wooden animals nearby. "This room is getting a bit small for you and Samuel, especially as he grows." Abigail nodded. The space, while cozy and far better than anything they could have hoped for when Noah found them in the alley, was indeed becoming cramped. "I own a piece of land just outside town," Noah continued. "It's not much, about 10 acres with a creek running through it. I've been saving to build a house there someday." He paused, watching her reaction. "I thought maybe we could build it now, for all of us." Abigail's eyes widened. "A house, Noah, that's a huge undertaking." "I know," he acknowledged. "But I've been talking to Jim Carson. He's the best builder in the county. He says we could have something simple but sturdy up before summer if we start soon." He took her hand. "What do you think? Would you and Samuel like a real home with room to grow?" Abigail glanced at her son, happily lost in his imaginary world of horses and cowboys. "A home," she repeated softly, "with space for Samuel to play, maybe a garden, and a proper stable for Star and any other horses we might acquire," Noah added, "room enough for whatever the future brings." The implication was clear, and Abigail felt her cheeks warm. "It sounds wonderful," she admitted. "But can we afford it?" Noah smiled. "I've been saving for 5 years, Abigail. The stable does well, and I've made some good investments in town. We can afford it." The next few days were filled with discussions and planning. Jim Carson came to the stable with rough drawings of what the house might look like: a simple but spacious structure with a large kitchen, a comfortable parlor, 3 bedrooms, and a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Room to expand later if needed, the builder explained, pointing to an area of the plan. And I can add special touches where you want them built-in shelves, a sewing nook, whatever suits you. Abigail found herself caught up in the excitement of planning their home, choosing finishes and layouts with an enthusiasm that surprised her. Samuel was equally excited, especially when Noah promised him a room of his own with a window overlooking the stable they would build. Construction began in February, with the foundation laid out and the frame of the house taking shape, despite the occasional winter storm. Noah took Abigail and Samuel to see the progress each weekend, the 3 of them walking the property and imagining their future there. "This is where the garden will be," Abigail would say, marking out an area near the kitchen door. "And here's where we'll build Star's special stall," Noah would tell Samuel, showing him the spot where the new stable would stand. As the house rose from the ground, so too did Abigail's certainty that she was making the right choice. Noah was everything Daniel had not been: steady, thoughtful, and genuinely kind. He treated Samuel not as an obligation, but as a beloved son, teaching him with patience and encouraging his natural curiosity about the world. One evening in early March, as they walked back from visiting the house site, Samuel ran ahead, chasing a butterfly that had emerged in the unseasonable warmth. "He's so happy," Abigail observed, watching her son. "Happier than I've ever seen him, even before Daniel died." Noah squeezed her hand. "He's a resilient little fellow, and he deserves every happiness." "As do you," Abigail replied, stopping to face him. "Noah, I've been thinking. I don't want to wait until the house is finished to get married. Life is too uncertain, as we both know too well." Noah's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you sure? I thought you wanted to take things slowly." "I'm sure," Abigail confirmed. "I love you and Samuel loves you. We're already a family in all the ways that matter. Why wait?" Noah's face broke into a smile and he pulled her into his arms. "Abigail Marshall, are you proposing to me?" He teased. She laughed, a free and happy sound that echoed in the clear air. "I suppose I am. So what's your answer, Mr. Irving?" Instead of replying with words, Noah kissed her, a tender but passionate kiss that left no doubt of his feelings. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "Yes," he whispered. 1,000 times yes." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Old Tucson, with Samuel standing proudly beside them as Noah's best man. The entire town turned out for the occasion, filling the church and spilling out onto the steps. Abigail wore a simple cream-colored dress that Mrs. Wilson had helped her make, with tiny pearl buttons down the back that Noah would later confess drove him to distraction, thinking about undoing. Samuel was resplendent in a new suit, his hair slicked down in a failed attempt to tame his natural curls. But it was Noah who truly took Abigail's breath away as she walked down the aisle. Standing tall at the altar in a black suit with a crisp white shirt, his usually unruly hair neatly combed, he watched her approach with such naked adoration in his eyes that she nearly faltered in her steps. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them man and wife, Noah bent to include Samuel in their first embrace as a legal family, lifting the boy into his arms as he kissed Abigail to the cheers and applause of the congregation. The celebration afterward was held at the community hall, with food contributed by nearly every household in town and music provided by the same band that had played at the church social, where Noah had first danced with Abigail. As evening fell, they said their goodbyes, leaving Samuel in the care of Mrs. Wilson for the night. Noah had arranged for them to stay at the hotel in town, a rare luxury in the frontier community. "Are you happy, Mrs. Irving?" Noah asked as they walked hand in hand toward the hotel, the stars just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Abigail squeezed his hand. "Happier than I ever thought possible again," she answered truthfully. "And you?" Noah stopped and turned to face her, his expression serious despite the joy of the day. "Abigail, when I found you and Samuel in that alley, I thought I was saving you, but the truth is you saved me. I was existing, not living. You brought me back to life." Tears pricked at Abigail's eyes. "We saved each other," she whispered. Their wedding night was everything Abigail had both anticipated and feared: tender, passionate, and occasionally awkward as they learned each other's bodies. Noah was patient and gentle, and by the time they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Abigail felt as though they had crossed an invisible threshold into a new level of intimacy and understanding. The next morning, they collected Samuel from Mrs. Wilson and returned to the stable, now their temporary home until the house was completed. Samuel, full of stories about his evening with the Wilsons' grandchildren, barely seemed to notice the subtle shift in the adults' relationship, accepting their new status as husband and wife with the easy adaptability of childhood. Spring brought rapid progress on the house. By April, the walls were up, the roof was on, and work had begun on the interior. Noah and Abigail spent every spare moment at the site, Noah working alongside the builders while Abigail planned the details of their future home. Samuel, too, was a frequent visitor, watching in fascination as his new room took shape, complete with the promised window overlooking the spot where the stable would soon be built. Star, now a gangly 4-month-old filly, remained the center of his world, and he talked endlessly about how she would have the best stall in the new barn. In late May, just as the house was nearing completion, Abigail confirmed what she had begun to suspect. She was expecting a child. She told Noah one evening as they sat on their favorite bench outside the stable, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. "Noah," she began, her heart racing with both excitement and nervousness, "I have something to tell you." He turned to her, his expression curious. "What is it, love? We're going to need that third bedroom sooner than we thought," she said, taking his hand and placing it gently on her still flat stomach. "The baby should arrive around Christmas." For a moment, Noah simply stared at her, his eyes wide with shock. Then, with a whoop of joy that startled the horses, he lifted her off the bench and spun her around, heedless of who might see. "A baby," he whispered when he finally set her down. "Our baby." Abigail nodded, her own joy reflected in his face. "Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," Noah replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Abigail, you've given me everything I never dared hope for again: a family, a purpose, a future." He placed his hand reverently on her stomach once more. "And now this miracle. I don't know what I did to deserve such blessings, but I swear I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of them." They agreed to wait to tell Samuel until Abigail was further along. At only 5 years old, the concept of time was still abstract to him, and they didn't want him to grow impatient with the long wait. The house was completed in early June, just as the summer heat began to intensify. Moving day was a community event, with friends and neighbors helping to transport their modest belongings from the stable to the new house, followed by a housewarming party that lasted well into the evening. Standing on the porch that night after everyone had left, Samuel asleep in his new room and the house quiet around them, Abigail and Noah looked out at the land that was now truly their home. "What do you think?" Noah asked, his arm around her waist. "Is it what you imagined?" Abigail leaned into his embrace. "It's better," she said softly. "It's everything I stopped letting myself dream about after Daniel died." She placed her hand over his where it rested on her waist. "And I have you to thank for it all." Noah shook his head. "No, Abigail. All of this we built together, and we'll keep building day by day." As summer progressed, they settled into life in their new home. Noah began construction on the stable with help from several men in town who owed him favors. Samuel started school in September, proud to ride into town each morning on Daisy, with Noah beside him on his own horse. Abigail's pregnancy progressed smoothly, her body rounding with new life as autumn turned the desert landscape golden. They told Samuel about the baby in October when Abigail could no longer hide her condition. "You're going to be a big brother," Noah explained as the three of them sat on the porch one evening. "The baby will be here around Christmas." Samuel's eyes grew wide. "A brother, like Johnny Wilson has." "Or a sister," Abigail added, smiling. "We won't know until the baby arrives." Samuel considered this seriously. "I think I'd like a brother," he decided, "but a sister would be okay too, I guess." He looked up at Noah. Will you still have time to teach me about horses if there's a baby?" Noah pulled the boy onto his lap. "Samuel, listen to me. Having a new baby won't change how much your mother and I love you. You'll always be our special boy, our firstborn son." He glanced at Abigail, including her in his words. "We're just making our family bigger, not different." Samuel seemed satisfied with this explanation, and in the weeks that followed, he threw himself enthusiastically into preparations for the baby, helping to arrange the nursery and talking to his soon-to-be sibling through Abigail's growing belly. December arrived with unseasonably cold weather. The stable was completed just in time, providing warm shelter for their growing collection of horses, including Star, who had developed into a beautiful filly with a gentle temperament perfect for Samuel. As Christmas approached, Abigail felt the baby drop lower in her pelvis, a sign that the birth was not far off. Dr. Wilson visited regularly, pronouncing everything progressing normally, but advising Noah to be prepared to fetch him at a moment's notice. On December 23rd, just as they were decorating their Christmas tree, a much larger version of the small pine Noah had brought to their room the previous year, Abigail felt the first contraction. "Noah," she said calmly, placing a hand on her swollen belly. "I think it's time." The labor progressed quickly, much to Dr. Wilson's surprise. "Second babies often come faster," he explained as he prepared his instruments, "but this little one seems in quite a hurry." Just after midnight on Christmas Eve, with Samuel sleeping peacefully in his room and Noah holding her hand, Abigail gave birth to a healthy baby boy with a shock of dark hair and a lusty cry that announced his arrival to the world. "He has good lungs, Doctor." Wilson observed with a smile as he handed the swaddled infant to Abigail. "And he's perfect in every way." Noah, his eyes wet with tears, looked down at his wife and newborn son with an expression of wonder that mirrored the one he'd worn when Star was born nearly a year before. "What shall we call him?" Abigail asked, stroking the baby's soft cheek. Noah sat on the edge of the bed, his arm around Abigail's shoulders. "What about Daniel?" he suggested quietly, "to honor his memory and all that led us to this moment." Abigail looked up at her husband, her heart full of love for this man who understood so perfectly what she needed. "Daniel Noah Irving," she said, testing the name. "It's perfect." When Samuel woke the next morning, Christmas Eve day, he was greeted with the news that his brother had arrived during the night. "Can I see him?" he asked eagerly, bouncing on his toes with excitement. Noah led him to the bedroom where Abigail sat propped up against pillows, baby Daniel asleep in her arms. Samuel approached cautiously, his eyes wide with curiosity. "He's so little," he whispered. "You were this small once too," Abigail told him, patting the bed beside her. "Would you like to hold him?" With Noah's help, Samuel sat beside Abigail and held his baby brother, his small face solemn with the responsibility. "Hello, Daniel," he said seriously. "I'm your big brother Samuel, and I'm going to teach you all about horses when you're bigger." That night, Christmas Eve, Noah brought their dinner to the bedroom so Abigail wouldn't have to get up. The four of them, Noah, Abigail, Samuel, and tiny Daniel, shared a simple meal together, their first as a complete family. After Samuel was tucked into bed with promises that Santa would indeed find them in their new home, Noah returned to the bedroom where Abigail was nursing Daniel. "Happy?" he asked, sitting beside her and gently stroking the baby's downy head. Abigail looked up at her husband, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she replied. "And you?" Noah leaned down to kiss her, then pressed another kiss to his son's forehead. "I was thinking about the first night we met," he said softly. "Your child slept on an empty sack, and I said he'd sleep on my bed that night. I never imagined where that simple act of kindness would lead us." "It led us home," Abigail whispered, leaning against his shoulder. "To this moment, this family, this life we've built together." Outside, a light snow began to fall, rare for the Arizona desert, but perfect for Christmas Eve. Inside the sturdy house Noah had built for his family, warmth and love filled every corner, a stark contrast to the cold alley where he had found Abigail and Samuel just 1 year before. "Merry Christmas, my love," Noah murmured, his arm around his wife, his newborn son sleeping peacefully between them. "Merry Christmas," Abigail replied, her heart so full it seemed impossible it could contain such happiness. And many, many more to come. Years later, the Irving family would become one of the most respected in the county. Noah's livery stable expanded into a successful horse breeding operation, with Samuel eventually taking over much of the business as he grew into a fine young man. Daniel, true to his namesake, proved to have an adventurous spirit tempered by his father's steady nature. And there would be more children, 2 daughters who brought a special joy to their parents' lives. But Abigail would always remember that Christmas of 1878 as the moment their family truly began, not when Noah found them in the alley, not when they moved into their home, not even when they married, but when they sat together on Christmas Eve, bound by love and the promise of a future brighter than either of them had dared to hope for after the losses they had endured. From an empty sack in an alley to a home filled with laughter and love, their journey had been unexpected but perfect in its own way, a testament to the healing power of kindness and the enduring strength of hearts brave enough to love again.